first products that we launched in the very early stages was a one pizza capacity home oven. And just for the listeners to sort of try and visualize that, it was almost like a little concrete igloo.
Hello and welcome to Starting Small. My name is Cameron Nagle, and what you're about to hear is a resilient story to an entrepreneur's journey over the brand that we know and consume today. At Starting Small, I believe that everyone has a story to tell under one philosophy. Everyone starts small. Even these founders have once started where you are, in their parents' kitchen, basement, out of a wagon, and many more. At Starting Small, we discuss the strategies used, the obstacles overcome, and the successes of an entrepreneur's journey. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Starting Small, and make sure to leave a review to let us know how you enjoyed it. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today, I'm joined by Tom Gozney of Gozney Outdoor Pizza Ovens. Tom, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, mate, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so I'd like to start out with your upbringing. Where did you grow up, and what would you say your childhood was like?
Yes, I had a really good childhood, man. I grew up on the south coast of England. We lived in a small sort of rural seaside town. Mum and dad were sort of local business owners. They owned a pharmacy in the local town. So it was a real, I sort of lived in a sort of suburban cul-de-sac. We call it a cul-de-sac in England, and loads of young kids on the street. So we had fun, man. It was good.
Would you say you had an entrepreneurial mindset, say like selling lemonade stands or products, anything like that?
Do you know what? When I used to sell chocolate bars when I was in school, and so I suppose there was a little bit of a hustler in me from the get-go. I suppose there was entrepreneurial spirit. I'm sure that was ingrained in me from a young age, having mum and dad as like business owners and seeing how they were making money and earning a living. I think it was something that was definitely present in my childhood. Yeah,
Definitely. So progressing on, did you end up studying at a university then with your time in the UK?
Do you know what, Cameron, man? My time growing up wasn't a straight line. It was, I had a relatively good childhood, but I really struggled in school. I suffer from dyslexia, and back when I was in school, albeit however long ago that was, 30 odd years ago now, it wasn't as commonly catered for as it is today.
Yeah.
And so I found that I found school really frustrating, like struggled, didn't understand why I wasn't progressing like other kids, didn't learn from a textbook, right? Super practical learner, really loved being hands-on, very visual, all of those things. So found it really frustrating to try and learn in school. And sort of knock-on impact of that was that I just didn't do overly well in education. And I think probably because of the frustrations surrounding that, started acting out as a young kid and getting naughty. And so I became quite a wild child when I hit my teenage years, got immersed in sort of drugs and alcohol, certainly didn't go down an educational route. I went to colleges but got kicked out, went to a university, got kicked out. It wasn't a conventional route for me, man.
Yeah, definitely. So I actually saw that on the website, a little bit of your history and your story. I'd like to dive into that if you're fine, talking about your experience in rehab and how that actually pushed your creativity and interest in starting your own pizza oven.
Yeah, sure. So like I said, I was sort of pretty wild in my teenage years. I think a lot of it was like really not truly looking back now as like a mature adult, looking back and not really understanding what my passions were, where I thrived, what I was good at. I really didn't harness my passions in school because, I just struggled, and it didn't cater really to someone that learns in the way that I did. So I got heavily involved in drugs and drink. It was bizarre. We grew up in the forest, and we weren't in inner cities, and almost, man, it exacerbated the problem. Like drugs and alcohol were like what everyone seemed to be doing. I think it was just accelerated with my group of friends. There was a very small group of us, and we were all quite rebellious and pushed it to the limits. And so that sort of sent me on a challenging spiral. And at the age of 21, I landed in rehabilitation. I guess I got to the point where I was really done. I'd like tried to stop a number of times. I sort of embraced it and partied quite hard in my teenage years. When I got into my sort of late teens, early 20s, it was like, hang on a sec, this is actually like a bigger issue than I'd actually anticipated, right? I tried to slow down, try not to drink certain times, and just couldn't stop. And so it became progressively worse as I got into my 20s. And then after a series of interesting events, I just decided that I wanted to turn my life around and stop right at the age of 21. And so bless my mum and dad, they were sort of really ready for me to surrender and say, like, now is the time for me to make changes. They've been sort of trying to encourage me to change the way I was leading my life for a number of years. Mm-hmm. And so mum and dad supported me going to a rehabilitation centre in South Africa, obviously based in the UK. I wanted to break out of the UK and go somewhere further afield. So I was completely disconnected from the existing life that I built. There was no easy route out. It was like, go over there and get fixed, or go over there and get fixed. The only option really, right? And so I did just shy of a year in rehabilitation centre, a place called South Coast Recovery Centre in Durban, in SA. And it was life-changing, very difficult, very amazing, life-changing. I suppose it helped me to surrender, helped me to see the nature of my addiction, all of those things, and then came out and had a sort of new zest for life, albeit that was when it became really challenging for me, right? You know, coming out as a 21-year-old into the real world, all my friends are still taking drugs and drinking and doing all of that stuff. That was when the real program started, right? And it was challenging. So I came out, and that's probably the most vulnerable part of my journey, was coming out of treatment at the age of 21 and then realizing I didn't have like the confines of a rehabilitation clinic around me. I didn't have counselors on call, you know, to chat through how I was feeling and all of those things. So it was challenging, man. But I suppose that was like a really, really interesting part of like my journey. And I sort of came out and didn't really know how to socialize as a sober person, right, with my existing network. And so threw myself into cooking and entertaining, and almost feel like recovery sort of forced me to grow up, you know, 7 or 8 years ahead of my time, started hosting dinner parties rather than going out partying and stuff like that. And, you know, not that I was remotely ashamed of that. I was so unbelievably proud of my recovery and making the changes that I was making in my life. So there was no compromise that was, you know, that was out of the question for me. I was like, by the time I'd come out of treatment, I was so determined never to drink again, never to touch drugs again. I'd sort of had a taste of what a future life could be like for myself without all of that bullshit clouding life and inevitably leading me to really dark places, right? So I was hell bent on staying clean, and I'm still clean today from that first stint in rehab. I marked a decade and a half this year, so 15 years of clean time year, which is thanks, man. But came out and threw myself into cooking, man, and that's where everything began for me. I found the passion for the community and the sense of connection with friends and family, and that was really special. And then built, you know, we made pizzas one evening in our conventional oven. They were crispy, and no, they weren't crispy. They were soggy and a little bit rubbish. And I sort of said to my girlfriend at the time, who was there, who's now my wife, Laura, I'm going to build a pizza oven in the garden. She was like, babe, we're broke. We don't have any money. Like, what are you going on about? We don't need a pizza oven in the garden. And nevertheless, I started building it, convinced her that I could do it really affordably. And that's really where the business was born. I didn't know it was a business in that moment, but that was where the business was born.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm curious to go into like your mindset during this time, and with no prior experience, and what was the research process and the prototyping process like when building that first pizza oven? What did that look like?
Yeah, so like the first ever oven, when it was for me personally, I'd literally made pizzas one evening. I said to my wife, I'm going to buy a pizza oven for the garden. I looked online, and there was like maybe one company in the UK selling them, and they were importing them from Italy, and they cost thousands of pounds. there are these prefabricated domes and you built a base. And I was just like, I didn't have any money at the time. I was broke trying to find my way, right? And so
Yeah.
I spent literally an hour researching how to build a hand-built brick oven online, and ordered a load of materials that night. Next day started digging the foundations. That was before I really dove in as a business, built that oven in the garden. It completely changed the way that I entertained and socialized, and my friends that used to come over would stop bringing beers and start bringing toppings. It sort of organically built out this lifestyle of recovery around me at such a vulnerable time in my life, which was incredible. It was almost like by intervention, like divine intervention, that this oven had given me the gift of like sobriety without me having to build boundaries that made me feel socially isolated from my friends, right? Like I didn't want to stop them bringing beers, but they just organically did that. And so it was amazing. It was a gift to me. And then after probably about a few months of using them, my friends were asking me if I could build them for them. I sort of improved the design a little bit, but then the sort of penny dropped. I was building one for my brother-in-law, and I was just, we were chatting when we were tiling an oven in his garden, and I was just like, he said, "Bud, this is such an amazing journey you're on. You've got to turn this into a business." And that was when the sort of penny dropped, and it's like, how can I make this more affordable for consumers at home? How can I make it easier? We were building these elaborate hand-built brick ovens that took a ton of time to construct. They're expensive to make, all of that stuff. And so then I set upon a journey heavily researching pizza ovens, how they worked, the engineering behind them, the materials they were made of. And I probably spent about 3 or 4 months just extensively studying every single pizza oven brand that was on the open market, right? And truly learning around how the material that retained heat re-radiated the heat, like the ratios between the internal volt height to the door height, and how it made the oven work with oxygen flow, and learn all of that stuff, right? And then went on a journey to design my first ever product that I was going to sell to consumers. And it was really just an ultimate passion project. I'd almost felt like I really didn't have a purpose or drive. I didn't know how I was going to earn a living. I was helping a friend install solar panels at the time, and I was desperately ambitious. Didn't realize how ambitious I was back then, but desperately ambitious and really determined to do something for myself, right? A little bit of me, didn't really want to necessarily have a boss. I wanted to be in control of my own destiny, but also just felt like I needed a passion to dive out of bed in the morning for, right? And that was never going to be being a laborer for someone else, or, like that sort of thing.
Definitely. So in these early days, you decided to commercialize and begin selling. What did that look like? Were you selling it to just local friends? I also saw local businesses. Was this really the commercial side of the stance that you went into?
Yeah, so the first products that we launched in the very early stages was a one pizza capacity home oven. And just for the listeners to sort of try and visualize that, it was almost like a little concrete igloo. I made a fiberglass mold. I researched the material composition of the refractory concrete, which is basically like a high heat concrete. It's like a clay based heat proof concrete that retains heat. And then I found a manufacturing facility in the north of England in Sheffield that would essentially fill my mold for me, put the oven. There was sort of 3 parts to the casting. There was a concrete igloo dome, and there was 2 parts to the base. And so we would then have them on a pallet, and we would ship them directly to the customer, and we were selling to consumers. So I found a manufacturer. I got a £5,000 loan from my mum. £2,000 went on a mold, a fiberglass mold. Another £2,000 went on a website that one of my best friends built me.
Wow.
Back in the very early days. I sort of learned how to do product design. We learned how to market. My wife, probably about 4 or 5 months after starting the journey, who was my girlfriend back then, quit her job in London, moved an hour and a half down to where we lived outside of London to work with us. And then we just started building it together. Self-taught marketing, brand, customer service, logistics, all of that stuff, right? It was real wet behind the ears, no experience, just really eager to make it work. And that was the journey that we started on.
Definitely. I'd like to go back to like those early days at launch, logistically shipping wise. So a customer, I'm sure the customer base was all UK. Say they order
Yeah.
a pizza oven. What does that look like, the shipping process? Did you guys personally hand deliver those?
Yeah, so in the very, very early days, we did, and then we struck a deal with the manufacturer that they would ship the pallet. So we would charge the customer a delivery charge of £49. I still remember it now,
Mhm.
and the manufacturer in Sheffield would ship a pallet with the oven on it. We had all of the ancillary products, so the flues and caps, the doors. I got local fabricators to make all of those locally for us. So I had all of the ancillary products for the ovens stored in our garage. I would go and bubble wrap them. We would put them in a box. We would ship them out the door. We were using a local. I remember it was like an epiphany when I realized how that we could use an online parcel booking program instead of calling FedEx or whatever it was back then. And so we hand packaged everything. We built all of our own manuals. Those went out in a separate box to the consumer. And that's how we did it in the beginning. Yeah.
Wow. So what did that marketing strategy look like to convince consumers that this product was something truly convenient for them?
Yeah, so it was interesting. I don't know if this is naughty to admit or not, but like I don't care now. It's such a long time ago. But we learned from a friend how to undertake SEO in the very early stages, right? And like how to build search rankings on Google and stuff like that. So we probably built a ton of sort of fake profiles pretending to be consumers that had installed one, and we were blogging about our own ovens as customers. And we didn't really know how to market, right? We were going out in landscaping forums and saying, I just bought an oven from the Stone Bake Oven Company, it's an amazing piece of kit, they're great customer service, blah 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 blah, all
Yeah,
this stuff. And not only were we doing that to try and generate awareness, but we were also giving free ovens out to influential people back in the day. So this is like 2012. There's some sort of TV personalities in the UK. We gave a couple out to them. Social media, Instagram wasn't, it wasn't such an active part of the strategy like it is today, right? But
definitely.
we were doing like agricultural shows to try and gain sales, so localized shows, but then also going out to influential people and giving products out. And ended up escalating from one chef to a few chefs, and then all of a sudden we had this roster of UK based celebrities on our website, and we had their testimonials and so on and so
Wow.
forth. So then it was just trying to get people to the website, right? And we had sort of two or 3 years where we were really, really grinding to get the brand built, and then sort of year three or four, we just jumped. We went from selling sort of 20 ovens a month the year before to 150 ovens a month or something like that. And it
Wow.
was so significant for us because they were about £1,000 each, something like that. So it was all of a sudden it became much bigger numbers for us. It was crazy.
Wow.
We sort of worked really hard for 2 to 3 years and got a little bit more momentum, and then it just sort of started to spiral for us.
It's amazing. So this is the transition from Stone Bake Oven Company, and then you launch Gozney. I'm curious, what was that vision and transitioning to Gozney and really commercializing also not just UK, but also going into international markets? What was that vision for you?
Yeah, so whilst we were building Stonebake, I had the idea for Rockbox, which was the ultimate convenience, getting wood-fired cooking to more consumers all over the world, right? Stonebake Oven Company ovens were heavy. Whilst they were like the most convenient wood-fired oven that you could buy on the market, you didn't have to hand build it, relatively small and light. They were still like 150 pounds for the dome to lift, right? So it was two
Mm,
strong guys, or two strong women to lift it into position, right? And
yeah.
and and so and there was also challenges of like they were so expensive to ship because of their weight. Like 250 pounds all in, shipping that into Europe just became sort of counterintuitive economically. It was like, as soon as you ship them and you pay the delivery charge, it's eating all your profit, or you have to pass that on to the customer. And so it just didn't really work.
Mm,
And so I saw an opportunity to develop a product that we could ship anywhere in Europe, for like £10. and that was where the concept of Rockbox was born. And so that was probably 2012 to 2013, and then we spent 3 years developing it. The key challenges with Rockbox was trying to make a lightweight product work like a stone oven, right? They work on thermal mass. The weight of the stone absorbs the heat, re-radiates it, and it's essentially what makes them stay so hot. So there was an engineering challenge for us to overcome, which we did. And in 2016, we launched Rockbox, and that was a sort of game-changing product for us. We were like the original innovators and the first people to launch a portable stone oven into a global market. They just didn't exist at that time. And so now if you look online, there's hundreds of different portable stone ovens, so it was really interesting. We truly were like the pioneers of building that category, right? Which is great, and something I'm really proud of. And whilst we were doing that, we also had a commercial oven business. So we launched Gozney Professional Ovens in the UK. I saw an opportunity to develop a line of ovens that were easier for restaurant owners to install. All of the ones out of Italy were pre-built. You had to take your shop fronts down to put them in. I designed and patented a modular installation system that could allow us to take a giant sort of 2-ton commercial oven through a doorway and assemble it in a day in a restaurant without having to take the shop front down. So we launched that in 2014, and we just overnight became UK market leaders for professional wood-fired ovens. And so what we'd actually done, Cameron, was we sort of accumulated 3 different brands over the journey of startup, right? Which was Stonebake Oven Company, Gozney Professional Ovens, and Rockbox. And then we got into sort of 2016, 2017, and I had a future view on what I wanted our product lines to be and how I wanted them to look. And there was just a moment where we felt, we've got a significant opportunity to scale a line of products globally. Let's simplify what we're doing. Let's build one brand with continuity, and let's go after it, right? And so that's really where we migrated everything into Gozney and consolidated it into one brand, which is Gozney Ovens.
Amazing. So you mentioned Gozney as one of the pioneers, and I'm curious, especially at-home consumer, what would you say differentiates Gozney from some of the other brands that you noticed that jumped on, say, later?
Yeah, sure. So there are lots of brands doing it. There's one brand, Uni, which is our competitor, that has done a really, really good job. They've really done well in the portable space. And I think they launched similar time that we did. We went on a similar journey. I would say the difference is, right, between us and any other portable oven out there is we've sort of really built all of our products through our professional oven heritage, right? And so whilst we have thick insulation in our ovens, like the mandate really when we designed Rockbox and any other product was to make it truly perform like a big stone oven, right? And so the differentiating factor from us to any is like, our ovens will get hot and stay hot. They're insulated really well below the stone floor. The stone is thicker than any other portable oven out there. Like we sort of over-engineer our products just to work seamlessly for consumers. So they're brilliantly built. They're really well engineered. And there's sort of 3 things that we focus on, Cameron, which is aesthetics are super important to us. I'm obsessed by design. The quality of the product is absolutely paramount, and the way it's engineered to perform for the consumer, to make it effortless in use for the consumer, are really important. There are other brands out there doing it well. Our products stand head and shoulders above from like engineering quality perspective, and in my opinion, aesthetics. I would say that because I designed them, but that's the differentiator.
Amazing. I'm curious, with product development over the years, what would you say is that main demographic, if you can depict that from the at-home consumer?
It's really interesting, right? So it's a relatively new category. You could say it's sort of like AB1 families with good disposable income. 2 kids live in suburban areas, but truly, like that's the sort of like boring technical answer. But I would say we're transitioning. Like the products that we're producing are building new categories, right? We're continually evolving categories that don't exist. So, I mean, we've got customers that are people that are sacking in their jobs, buying a Rockbox or a Dome, and building a street food business out of our products, right? Like that's insane. So those are some of our customers. And, you know, wood-fired ovens and pizza ovens, what we're doing, they're transitioning from niche to mainstream at the moment, right? And so customer base is growing. There's more awareness for the sector. You know, I think really interesting is in a sort of typical barbecue brand is generally skewed to a male audience. You know, we're quite equally skewed between female and male, which is great. And I think that's a lot of that is to do with the way that our products look and you know that they're thoughtfully designed to appeal to both male and female, whereas a barbecue, without being sexist, a barbecue can be quite ugly. It's not overly pretty to put in the garden. There's nothing to really get excited about visually. Whereas we really wanted to change that, right? We wanted to change the overarching experience that, yeah, it's like really fun to cook outdoors. It's predominantly being a male-orientated thing for years, right? It's like no one really gives a shit about dad stood in the corner with smoke in his eyes, burning sausages. Like no one cares to be part of that and help. And we wanted to innovate products that people actually wanted to participate in the cooking. And so making them look really good and making them fun to use, we found has pulled families together, which is a really interesting part of what we're doing.
Definitely. Amazing. Well, I like to conclude each episode with this. If you could share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur, maybe something you've learned along your journey or regret, what would that be?
Do you know what? That's a really good question. I think the biggest thing for me, right, that has like driven me is having personal conviction that anything's possible. And I think that, you know, like so many people, especially in the UK, right, Cameron, like we've got a lot of cynical people here that don't believe in that sort of like what you guys call the American dream, right? That entrepreneurial dream of anything's possible. It's quite a cynical mindset in the UK. One thing that I've had in bucket loads that I've never ever dropped, because business is tough, right? You go through massive wins and you get really, it can be really disheartening when you face challenges constantly, because business for me seems like a continual evolution of like solving problems, whether it be internal problems or problems to the consumer, but you're like problem solving constantly. So it can be quite a challenging environment, right? And so there are lots of people that told me like, why do you want to build a pizza oven business? It's ridiculous. Who cares about pizza ovens and blah, 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 blah. And I've just had like unnerving determination to build what I've built. I've never let anybody hold me back. I think in some instances, really good to get mentors around you, but also truly following your instincts. If you're immersed in your brand, your market, your consumers, your instinct is so powerful, man. And like, there's been a few instances in the past where I probably haven't followed my I definitely haven't followed my instincts due to whatever factors internally at work. And that's held us back. And so I would say, if I was talking to myself 10 years ago, don't let anybody hold you back. Anything's possible. You can do whatever you set out to do, and don't underestimate the power of your own instincts.
Definitely. Well, Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to join me. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check out Gozney at us.gozney.com. And I promise you will get hungry if you check out the website as well.